Welcome to Conversations with Carmela, where the people are always interesting and the conversation is always something special. Hi, I'm Carmela Castellano Garcia. I'm so pleased that you could join us today for an interview with Tien Hsieh, Portrait of an Artist. Tien Hsieh is a concert pianist. She has her Bachelor of Arts from the University of Houston and a Master in Music from the Manhattan School of Music. And Tien has had a 20-year career as an international concert pianist, performing throughout the world and the United States. Tien, I'm so pleased you could join us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love your office.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I love the space. It's just wonderful to be here.
Well, it's so great to have you in the space, and so pleased you're going to be performing this weekend.
Which I'm really excited about.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to take some time to have a chat with you and really understand Tien as an artist. And so I really want to, kind of go back to the origins of your musical influence and really understand that, help me understand, why is it that you came to play the piano?
Well, I think playing piano, or basically music in general, is in my DNA. Because my mom being a pianist and teacher, and my father, although he's an architect, was always blasting music, Beethoven's symphonies in the background. So growing up, the household was just filled with music. And I guess by the time I was 3, I started to play the piano because my mom was always teaching. And the house had we constantly had students coming into the house in Taiwan. And I always wanted to go to the piano and say, hey, it's my turn. Let me have that lesson. I want to have class. And my mom said, no, you're too young. You can't do that. And so then finally my dad said, well, I think you better start giving her lessons soon because she's going to develop some very bad habits. And so I started formal lessons when I was 5.
And that was your mother was your first teacher?
Yes.
Wow.
Forever my teacher.
So it sounds like both your parents had a major influence on your love for music.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my mom really is the perfect role model because she was she grew up playing piano, and then by the time it was time to go to college, her sister said, who played the mother role because she lost her mom when she was 6. So the oldest sister took on the role of being a mom to 5 girls. And so by the time my mom went to college, she said, oh, I want to go and major in music. And her oldest sister said, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't major in music. It's too hard. You have to do something more practical. And so she said, oh, okay, fine, I'll go to med school. So she went to med school. And then she finished her internship. And then she said, okay, I did what I'm supposed to do. Now I'm going to do what I want to do. And then she went back to music, and she went to music school and went after her dream of playing the piano and has been doing that ever since. And so my parents have a great influence on me in that whatever it is that you do in life, it is important that you love it.
Well, you clearly love classical music as you've been a classical pianist. And I'm just very curious, you could have been a jazz pianist. You could be playing popular music. How is it that you became a classical pianist, and why do you have this love for classical music?
Yeah, well, I think our environment, we are the products of our environment. And in Taiwan, when I was a child, I wasn't exposed to jazz. We were exposed to a lot of classical music. If it wasn't classical music, then it was folk music. And coming here to the States, again, I was exposed to classical music just because that's what's in the household all the time. And it wasn't until much older that I actually even heard jazz. It was so new to me. And actually, when I was in grad school at Manhattan School of Music, they have a great jazz program. There are incredible jazz musicians at Manhattan School of Music. And I had a lot of friends that were jazzers. They're always great because they're so cool. They're not rigid. They're not uptight like a lot of the classical musicians who are always frowning, practicing, living in the practice rooms. But the jazzers were already, always very friendly, always relaxed. They love what they do. They're not rigid. And so a lot of my friends were jazzers. And then they said, hey, Tien, you should take jazz for non-jazz majors. And I was like, oh, no way, I can't do that. No, you must. So I tried. I actually signed up for a class for jazz for non-jazz majors, but I was so afraid that I didn't even show up for the first class.
Really?
So I dropped my first time and I said, okay, I'm going to do it next time. So I signed up again and I was only brave enough to sign up and register for the class. So the second time, I was also not brave enough to step into foot of that class. And so it's like, what was it about going to jazz for non-jazz majors that was so fearful to me? Because I think it's a whole different element of creativity and it's a whole different technique and you have to think about music in a very different way. If I had been exposed to the music when I was in maybe junior high and high school, it would have had a different influence. There probably wouldn't have been that element of fear. But now, for so many years, it's a different kind of training that I've had. So it was difficult to want to step into the experimenting of a whole different form, style, genre.
Well, you talked about the classical students in college being a certain way versus the jazz students, and you were a classical piano student. So tell me, what were you like in college, and what was the regimen of a classical piano student, and what were those the different ways that you focus as a classical student?
Yeah, well, being a pianist is a little more challenging than the other instruments because unless you have your own instrument, you have to rely on school. And very few students have their own instruments because you're students and it requires a large amount of space. In New York City, that is challenging. And whereas a violinist, they can practice almost anywhere. But a pianist, you have to rely on another space for practice. So for me, it was challenging because I think it was just in general challenging because you have to wake up very early to register for a practice room, and practice rooms are limited. And if you want to achieve a certain number of hours per day, you have to make sure that you plan ahead and structure your days. And so for a while, I was waking up at 4 a.m., even though I lived practically across the street at International House, which is really a dormitory for graduate students from universities in New York. And so they would house maybe like 2 Manhattan School of Music students. And they had their own practice rooms just because it's International House and they believe in arts and culture. And so I would wake up at 4 and practice there for an hour and then go to school, which opens at 6, and find my favorite practice room to make sure that I can get my favorite practice room on the 4th floor. Because not only is it a good piano, but this practice room looks right across the street to where Manhattan School of Music is. It's a very interesting intersection. 3 of the 4 corners, you have a music school, and then across the street is a Union seminary and also a Jewish seminary. So you've got, incredible amounts of inspiration right in this block. And my favorite practice room faced a window from the Jewish seminary. And every time I go in, I would see that same person studying. Whatever he's studying, divinity. I'm studying music. Everything we study is divine. He is up this morning. I'm up this morning. And I see, and he sees me. It's like, oh yes, we are in comfort that everyone is working towards something meaningful.
So those early, it sounds like it required an incredible amount of discipline. And in terms of those early hours and getting that right practice room and making sure you were the first one there. And so that's that intensity that you were referring to.
I think so. Yes. Because if you're not there in the mornings to make sure that you have the hours you need and arrange for the rest of the day, as well as the following day, you're not going to be able to have the hours you need. And for me, I had to get up that early also because I was working all the time in the afternoons. So the afternoons were reserved for work and classes.
So that must have been pretty exciting to go to school in New York. Tell me about what you liked about living in New York and that experience of New York. And how many years were you there?
I was there 7 years. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, New York has my heart forever. And by the time I arrived in New York after St. Louis, after Houston, I felt like I was finally home. And it wasn't even intentional. It was just I've had an ulcer since I was in high school. And the minute I went to New York, it went away. I didn't need to take medication anymore. Wow. It was all gone. It was like the magical drug. Huh. And I think it's the feeling that you are around people who are trying to do what you are doing. You don't need to know them. You don't need to meet them. They're not just in your school. They're everywhere. Everyone is trying to make something happen in New York. You know, and I think that's what makes it so lively. It doesn't matter if you're a visual artist, you're a singer, you're a dancer. Everyone is trying to achieve something. And for me, one of the greatest things was that it's a great playing ground for me because it's a great place to get my feet wet. I called every single place that I can imagine. Hi, can I play a concert at your place?
When you were a student, you were doing that?
Yeah.
As that's how you got exposure?
Yeah, when I was a student, I started doing that. And then I continued to do that. But I started doing that when I was a student. And the venues ranged from like senior centers to colleges to landmarks to libraries to you name it. Colleges.
And how did you book these particular gigs?
I called them. And sometimes because it's New York, and you're walking down the street, oh, this could be a good place. Let's go and find out. And I would just write it down and then find another time and come back and walk in and ask, hi, would you guys like to have a piano concert sometime? I see a piano from the outside or something like that, to that sort. And so a lot of places were really open to just saying, how strange you are. Yes, you can play a concert.
Wow, Tien, so you were really, you really had to promote yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if that was, I guess you can say it that way, yes.
Were the other students doing this, or did you find this was a unique way that you got yourself out there performing?
I think some of the students might have been doing that, but I just found it just very adventuresome and exciting it didn't matter to me whether or not someone else was doing it because I was so focused in doing my own thing that I wanted to try something new, you know. I always wanted to try something new, and there's always something new in New York.
New venue?
There's a new venue, there's a new audience, there's new energy. There is something fresh everywhere. And I wanted to find that. And I was very lucky that I was able to have the experience I had. And so the other thing about New York that was really great were my lessons. I had a great teacher, and in studying music, it means everything that you have a great mentor. And so I continued to study with him even after I graduated. So I was in school for 3 years for my master's and my professional studies.
He was your professor?
Yeah. And I continued to study with him for another 4 years before I moved out.
So when you left New York, you returned home?
I did. I had a little transition in the middle where I went to a summer music festival up in Meadowmount, upstate New York for, I think it was 6 or 7 weeks, and had everything shipped back from New York in boxes from UPS. And this festival was so amazing that they bought my piano that I had. Otherwise, I would have still been in New York. I was looking to leave New York for a while, but I couldn't leave because of my piano. And so this festival called and said, we would love to have you come and play some chamber music with us. And I said, wow, that's amazing. That's great. Because it's a really fine festival. I said, but I can't. And they said, why? What's keeping you? You know, what's preventing you from being able to come to our festival? And I said, well, my piano. Your piano? Why your piano? And I said, well, my piano needs a new home. So I can't leave until my piano finds a new home. Oh, well, what kind of piano do you have? So I told them 1927 Mason and Hamlin. Oh, how much did you get it for? What are you selling it for? I said, well, I'm selling it for the amount I paid for it, which is extremely reasonable. They said, oh, great. Well, we'll buy your piano. I'm like, wow. Did I just hear that correctly? Yes, Tien, we will buy your piano. Now can you come to the festival? I was so blown away. I was like, absolutely. I got off the phone, called UPS, set up a date, come and pack up all my stuff in boxes. And I was ready to move on to the next stage of my life.
And that next stage was coming back home?
Yes.
To Folsom, California now, where you are. Well, I'm curious. I mean, you were 7 years in New York. You began your career. How did that affect your career, making that change? You think of New York as the center where, arts and would happen. What did that mean for you to move actually back to Sacramento, California?
Oh, it was a really huge adjustment. First of all, there was so much silence here. And now I've learned to appreciate the silence. And I understand that it's necessary. I hadn't understood that before, but it's just that here, there's not very much culture going on, performing arts culture, that is. And the density of population is also not near what I was used to. And people have to drive here, for instance, from one place to, point A to point B, whereas everything is very accessible in New York. Everything is accessible for someone middle of the night. You can get up and say, oh, I would love to have a hot bagel. And you just go down the street to the bodega around the corner, And here it was, I think the lifestyle itself was a huge adjustment. And on top of that, it was, I guess, not being surrounded by people who were also in their elements made a difference.
Other artists?
Perhaps. Yeah. You don't have to be an artist. It helps to be an artist, but people are focused on what they're doing, that they're really concentrated in the element of what they do. And I didn't know where to find that here. And, but it turned out to be a really great thing. It took a long time to adjust living here, but I really appreciate the space and the time. The space not as in our physical space, but the space in what I can control with the time I have. Because in New York, you only had access to a piano for a certain amount of time. Eventually, I had my own piano for 2 years, but still there are limitations because you can't practice middle of the night. Well, actually, I could have in my last neighborhood in New York because it was a really terrible neighborhood. But here, I have access to my pianos 24/7. All I have to do is just go to my living room. And so I can structure the day totally gears towards my practice. And instead of structuring the practice around accessibility or around work, because I can schedule the students I have now around my practice as well. So all of that has really contributed to opening up the time I have to do research, to contact venues, and to do so much more than I was able to in New York in a lot of ways. So,
well, this goes to what I'm really curious about, Tien, is how do you have a career over 2 decades as an international concert pianist? I mean, that's amazing accomplishment that you traveled the world with your piano playing and played in all these prestigious venues and been acknowledged and won awards. What was your vision to make that career happen? I mean, and you achieved it. How did you achieve it?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm still working on it, but thank you so much for that. I think it's an endless journey. I think we always have to keep going. I don't think there is ever an end to what we want to do when you love something. And there was really no guideline or a template in how to proceed with a career in music.
They don't teach you that at the Manhattan School of Music?
They teach us how to hone in our skills. But no, nowadays, it's very different. So back then, really, there was hardly any information on, but there was the Career Alumni Office where you can get information on some research and materials for venues or suggestions of jobs. But as far as going out there, I mean, you need to have a publicity packet, you need to have testimonials, you need to have recommendations, you need to have a tracking of build your CV of your venues that you performed at. And it takes more than just having a biography. And so all of these elements that we eventually learn weren't taught at school. So I was really fortunate to have learned about it because California Arts Council here, not long after I moved back, gave me a scholarship and said, you need to go to a conference. And I thought, a conference? What's that? And so they gave me the scholarship. And before I got to the conference, I was assigned a mentor. And a performing arts conference basically is a gathering of agents, managers who have artists, and also people who present events. So those are called presenters. But so that's the basic two categories. So these people converge, they discuss, they collaborate to make things happen. Well, I didn't know that. So my mentor said, well, you need a big banner. You need something to hang up at your booth. Okay. And so anyway, so I'm learning all these things really from scratch, and it showed up at my first conference with a huge banner of my face. And then I'm looking around and everyone's got a roster of artists or a company logo. And I'm like, oh, okay. Eye-opening experience. We're learning as we go. But it has been actually very productive to have learned about that aspect of how to open paths in your career.
And so as an artist, you went to these kind of events, and that's where you would meet and network with folks who could then lead to gigs.
Yes, hopefully. Yes. I mean, I didn't understand that's what you were supposed to do, but yes, I guess that is what you were supposed to do, and so it was difficult to try to figure out how to start conversations. And so I'm still actually pretty bad at that. So usually someone else has to start that conversation and then I'll continue. But these conferences were just a whole learning experience. Like, for instance, I had to give my first speech. They call it a pitch. And I had a 2-minute pitch. And before then, I had never had the need to speak about anything, really. I mean, sure, I can talk and stuff, but, didn't really need to talk in front of the audience or anything, and didn't need to become a speaker. And so I didn't think anything of it to stand on a podium at my first conference in front of hundreds of presenters. And then I had stage fright and lost my voice. And then I looked at my watch and I can still talking. There's no sound coming out. And then I'm like, oh, I still have at least a minute left out of 2 minutes. And so that was frightening because I've never had that experience. And it's great that I've never had it again, knock on wood. But, and so things like that, we learn as we go. And in the beginning, I remember making some phone calls, and then my mom would say, oh, so how'd it go? And I said, oh, I feel like a little ant. You feel like a little ant? And I said, well, it's just these conversations. When I get off the phone, I feel like I'm shrinking into a little ant. She's like, well, ants are great, so you keep going. And I'm like, oh, okay. Eventually, I'll become an ant farm. Okay. But yeah. So coming back to California, I had that. It started at the beginning of my 20s years that I've been trying to do this. But my first contract actually really started when I was in New York for my first tour, which took 3 years to coordinate, just 5 concerts.
Wow.
But so again, we don't have a template of what is even a contract, coming out of music school. And so there was a venue that said, we would love to have you. Please, call us back. The director said, call us back with your fee. He's down in Florida. And I'm like, fee? Whoa. Did he just say fee? And we play that again, the answering machine. Fee. Please call us back with your fee. So I immediately called a couple of my buddies who are both pianists and said, we must gather tonight. Something very important. Group discussion. So we gather. I said, what's going on? I said, well, I have someone interested And for a concert, really? Tell us. And they're both like performing and stuff and very experienced and much older than me. And yet, I'm like, of course, I'm seeking advice from them. I said, so they asked me for a fee. A fee. And I said, yeah, so what should I say is the fee? They said, oh, my. Well, we have to discuss. And I said, so, I assume that they should house me, right? Oh, yes, they should definitely house you. They should feed you. And so there was this whole discussion all night. Oh, they should make sure that you can get there. They're going to cover your flight. Okay, finally, we came up with a fee, $200. Okay, we came up with a fee, finally. And so I called him back, and he wasn't there. And so I left a message with the secretary who said, well, may I take this message? Mr. So-and-so is not in the office right now. What is your message? I said, I have a fee. And she said, okay, what is your fee? And I said, $200. And she said, well, can you please put that in writing? In writing? Oh, sure. Okay. So I'm like typing on my typewriter. My fee is $200. I put it off in the mail. I don't hear anything. What happened? I guess it was too high. Well, I said $200 plus you have to provide accommodations and stuff, like lodging. And then time goes by, and then suddenly I received a message from the same guy. He said, Tien Hsieh, please get back to me. This is my final offer, $2,000. Please call me back right away. I never get these messages until late at night after I finish practice, right? And so I come back and I'm like, wait, is that right? Did they say that again? 2,000? I quoted 200, 2,000. That can't be right. Please call me. So I called back the next day and he wasn't there again. And the secretary said, well, what is your message? I said, my message is, the fee is fine. That's all? Yes, my message is the fee is fine. Okay, I will let him know. And then time goes by. I don't hear anything. I thought, was that right? Did he really say 2,000? Well, it's a good thing I didn't say it again. But I said it's fine. I guess it fell through. Oh, I got another message from him. I come back, hit play. Tien Hsieh, this is really, really my final offer. 2,500 final offer. And I thought, wait, is that right? We haven't even talked. And so I called back again. The next day, he wasn't there. Leave word with the secretary. Please tell him, yes, the final offer is fine. And so that was like my first contract. And I kept on thinking, how did that happen? It's probably because I guess no one has ever quoted them $200 and they thought I missed a zero, like it was a typo or something, And so that was like the beginning. And I thought, oh, okay. So that was in the year 2000. Actually, that was contracted in 1997. And so then I thought, oh, okay, now I know my worth. Is that my worth? I mean, it's funny, these things that you don't learn about. And so that's how it started.
Wow. So that means that from then on, your initial fee was quite higher than your original quote, right? Now your baseline went from 200 to 2,500, right? Well, let me ask you this, Tien. You traveled a lot to a good number of countries to perform over these years and throughout the United States. What was it like traveling as a woman, traveling on your own to these different concert venues? And what was that like? What were some highlights?
Oh, it's very freeing. I love it. I love the whole adventure of traveling. I find it invigorating. But I think one does have to be careful being a solo artist or being a solo traveler or being a woman. I mean, for instance, here I was in Prague at the train station, and I met some really nice thieves I didn't know were thieves. And they wanted to help me with my bags, my luggage. And I said, no, I can handle this. But without me even realizing, they were like rolling my bag, helping me onto the train and putting it above. And I said, no, I don't want it above because I don't like to lift things because it's bad for my hands. And I said, put it down. I didn't ask you to help me, but thank you so much. Please bring it down. And so they brought it down again. And I said, please leave my car. They left the car. And the train was about to take off. And I reached into my backpack and I was just overjoyed because to be on a trip where I'm about to go and, visit great places. I just played a concert and I went to Beethoven's grave. And it's just like, I'm reading literature, like Beethoven letters, and I'm on my way to Dresden or wherever it was that I was going. Leipzig? No, Weimar. But I'm in this euphoric state and I take out my sandwich and I look down. Oh, where's my passport?
Oh, no.
Where are my, what are they called back then? Money orders?
Oh, no.
Traveler checks. Traveler checks. So I had it all in a little pouch. And so when they reached up, they took everything. And so immediately I thought, oh, no. I jumped up and the train was starting to move. And I called the conductor, and I said, passport. And then right at that point, the window was open, the train was moving, and I see him, he sees me, and then there's a passport flying through the window from the outside, and he catches it and then throws it to me down.
No way!
And it was the weirdest thing. And it was like, he catches it, throws it to me, and I caught it. Oh, my passport. And so, I always call them the nice thieves because they just wanted the money. They didn't want you to be stuck. They didn't want you to be in trouble. But they ended up not giving anything because they were traveler checks.
Wow. That's amazing.
I know. And so I always think of how lucky I was. I was lucky, but the thieves, they didn't want to harm you. They just needed to get what they think they can get. They were probably going to throw that back onto their train anyway. It was just totally coincidental that I was like this and then see it fly through the window. And then the conductor throws it back at me. It's like you couldn't have even planned something like this or choreographed it. But
it's amazing.
Yeah, so things like that. I think I just was very fortunate, and they're nice thieves. I've encountered some, because I don't drive for the concerts in the US. And so, because you don't know where you're going, I prefer that transportation is taken care of. And sometimes I just cab it the whole way. Mm-hmm. Even if it's late at night. And so sometimes those can be interesting sessions to take a taxi late at night for a ride that is 2 to 3 hours. Mm-hmm.
So in terms of venues, because, part of this, you were seeking venues that you wanted to play in and places you wanted to go. Were there any particular venues that were just super special or that really stand out in your mind?
Oh, yeah. I think several, but I will mention my New York debut at Carnegie Hall was really special.
Oh, tell me about that. Your New York debut at Carnegie.
Well, I was still a student, and my parents came, and that was special not only in the performance element and the opportunity, but it gave me the chance to learn about the business too. And that my concert was not fully funded. So I had to go and look for a grant. So I learned about grant writing due to wanting to play this concert because it was only partially funded. So there was a learning experience outside of the performance element, which is great. I always find that if there's something else that you're learning aside from just your music, it really contributes to the process. And my parents were there and they were so proud. And afterwards, my mom said that this lady who bought a ticket, we don't know who she is, but after the concert, she came up and got on her knees and kissed my mom's feet. And my mom was so embarrassed and said, please, no, get up.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. And so there were other things about that concert, but I think that was a really great, memorable experience. And my first concert in Budapest was really great because here in the US, when you play well, people give you a standing ovation. Mm-hmm. But in Budapest, it was different. They thump in unison their feet. And it's like thump, thump. And it's almost startling when everyone is doing that in the hall at the same time.
Wow.
And I wasn't sure at first what was happening, but it was just on top of the applause, they applaud and thump in unison. And you were just like,
wow.
So it was more than just like energy. It was something else that was transformative in how they react to a shared experience as a collective. And I've only I did experience that once here. That was at Carnegie again, the second time I played there. Which was, what year was that? 2008. But anyway, so the second time I played there, after the first half, it happened. And I learned later on what it was that triggered it. It was the critic. And the critic had his cane. And he was sitting there, and there was like this silence after I finished the first half, because the end of that piece is really intense. So everyone's captured and captivated. And he goes, thump, thump, thump with his cane. And the whole audience went thump. And I was like, oh my God, wow, this is what happened in Budapest. I can't believe it.
Wow.
And so that was interesting. I mean, these were special moments that you treasure, because not because of the response, but I guess because of like the energy in the room collectively. And I guess another might be, when I played in London at St. Mary in the Fields. St. Mary in the Fields was, my concert was 3 days after the terrorist attack on the London Bridge, and which is right down the street from my hotel. And I stayed in near Trafalgar Square, which is where the venue is, just central London. And I remember sitting outside the hotel at a restaurant where I always go after I practice. I go and have dinner there, and then I go back to the hotel, and I'm sitting outside, and all these people started running down the street saying, you better go inside, go inside. And I'm sitting here going, what's happening, And because the news is not out yet, and people are just saying, people are like getting hurt. There's like chaos going on the bridge. And they didn't even know what it was. They were just running like crazy. And so I went back to my hotel, but then there was a lockdown. And because of now there is high security, even though it's a really nice hotel, they of course have to make sure that everyone is safe before they can even go back in. So it was on lockdown for a little while, maybe just like half an hour. And then they had heavy security to get people back in. So then there was so the following couple of days, you felt this tension in the air, just when you're walking down the street, or for instance, where I was practicing, I would go to this market, which is kind of like a farm to fork market, and to grab lunch for my practice breaks. And when I went there, it was the first time I noticed their board. They usually get their fresh foods every single day from one of the markets that was attacked. And they didn't have the fresh food due to the attack. And that just kind of like hit home indirectly. And then it was my concert, and it's a daytime concert. And I never expected it to be like not only packed, but they had to put out extra seating, which is almost unheard of at this venue. And it was beyond full capacity.
Wow.
And when I finished, there just so happens that I had a piece of Schubert, a short work by Schubert, that is really a tribute to the lives lost. Now, this program was already pre-designated on this piece was already on the program. So it's just sometimes it's just a matter of timing, like how things fall together in life. And this piece was placed at such a point in the program where I think it made a special impact to the people that were there due to what had just happened. And after the concert, a lot of people came up with, it it's so funny because it's like they're different from the people here. They're more reserved, and some even said to me, taking my hand, and these were handshakes that spoke 1,000 words, and they would say something like, "You understand," and it's like how they appreciated the music because it gave them comfort or a solace or something, whatever it is that they needed at that moment. And so several people even mentioned, thank you for Schubert today. We needed Schubert today. And so that was a really impactful experience for me anyway.
Sounds like it. I mean, this international travel sounds like it's something that you've really enjoyed and has been a very important part of your life. What is it that draws you to the international travel piece and seeing other cultures, and why is that important to you?
I guess it might start from the fact that I grew up on an island. I'm an immigrant here. I grew up in Taiwan, which not many people know about. And coming here when I was 9 was very fresh. And the idea of going to the States was like something so intriguing. And when we came here, we arrived here in San Francisco, it was freezing because it was the summer. And our first residence was in Napa. And so I experienced an extreme contrast of cultures as well as climate and so many elements. And I didn't speak the language at all. I didn't speak English at all.
And you were how old?
I was 9. I learned how to speak the language with a tape. Oh my God, and give me away my age. But yeah, so I would play a tape. I would have a tutor, and then she would tape a story. And then after she leaves from reading a story, I would just repeat after her, and I would just to learn the language. But I think that was probably planting the seed of being really interested in a foreign place. Because to me back then, this was a foreign place. And it was foreign for a long time, even though I had immersed myself here with my family. But you always feel like, for a long time, you feel like you are in a foreign place. Because back there in Napa, there were only 3 families of Chinese families. One was the restaurant owner. I think the other might have been a dentist. I don't remember the third one. But we knew all of them. So, and I actually really love the experience of being in a different place because there is something new and interesting all the time, whether it's the grocery store, which I love to go to in any city that I go to or any country, because I think food itself is so important because we need it every day. And what are these people eating? Really? Are they eating that many organic tomatoes? Or, I don't know. It's like, the cheese culture in France. Wow, I'm in heaven. And all these different places have something so special to offer if you just allow yourself to be curious enough and want to explore.
So, Tien, your curiosity, your desire to explore, your, interest in unique places. I was curious when we talked to you about performing here at this venue here on Del Paso Boulevard in Sacramento. And I know when my husband Angel had asked you to play, you were on the cusp about to perform at the Crocker Museum. And you were just so gracious and so quick to accept the invitation to perform here on Del Paso Boulevard, which is really kind of a non-traditional venue for classical music. And then I found out from getting to know you more about your interest in bringing your music to non-traditional venues. And I really wanted to hear more about that and how that's impacted your career and how that impacted your desire to play here on Del Paso Boulevard.
Well, non-traditional venues, I've always found interesting even when I was a student. Because first of all, I think the way they hold classical music concerts it's very stiff for a lot of people. And there's an element of divide. There's an element of divide with that culture and rest of the world, which I find repulsive. So I think it's important to kind of like bring that divide together or fuse it together somehow, fuse it so that there's less of a divide. So when I was a student, I don't even remember how I found out about this, that there are these Mariana Islands, these tiny little islands, and I wanted to go and play there. Such a strange thing to want to go and play piano concerts in Mariana Islands. And so back then, before computer days, you would have to make phone calls or write letters, snail mail.
Wow.
And eventually, I was very close to arranging actually a few concerts on these little islands, and some of them only have like a couple thousand people. And but the greatest thing was not only have they not heard of any piano music, or I'm sure by now it's different, but this is a long time ago, but they didn't have an instrument. Like some of the smaller islands didn't even have instruments. Mm-hmm. And so we would talk about, okay, let's bring in a little piano. This larger island has a piano, and then let's play there and then put it on a boat. So you can sail with the boat and come to the little island, and then we'll wheel it off the boat. We play a concert. Let's everyone experience piano music, and then we'll ship it back. We'll put the piano back and return it to the larger island. And the whole thing was so fascinating to me. I mean, just to imagine the possibility of that becoming reality, I was like giddy, just because there's something about that is so attractive to me. But it fell through, but that's okay. It fell through because they lost their funding for, it's not, I think they had a grant program for community events and projects. So this would have been a community event or project. And they lost their funding. So I did follow up actually for a couple of years, but I think it was a great project for another time. So it started a long time ago. Yeah. And I think it's very cool to do it here because actually in the beginning, when I first played at your parents' house, Angel mentioned your parents were so amazing to actually host a concert for me. And right before I went to play in Paris before the pandemic in 2020. And right after I played, Angel came up and I had met you and Angel for the first time. So I have a piano. And I thought, okay. And then, he said, I have a piano. I don't know how good it is, but I have a piano. You should come and check out the piano. Fast forward. It was at your house again, your parents' house again, your mom's celebration of life. And Angel said, well, I have a piano and I have a venue. I have a place. He said, you should try to do something. Can you come and see? I have a place. We can do something there. And I thought, but it was so vague. I didn't know what it meant, And then the third time, out of nowhere, I received a call from Angel right before my concert at Quaker. He said, hi, it's Angel. Can you come and play? We have a venue. We want you to play a concert. I have this piano. And if the piano's not good enough, we can do something about it. Can you come and play a concert for us? And I thought, oh, he wants to. Yes, absolutely. And he said something about Del Paso. I had never even knew anything about Del Paso. I guess I live in a very closeted world, I guess, but when I told my dad about it, he told me, oh, Del Paso, you're going to play Del Paso. But I didn't know. And so I thought, oh, something I mean, of course, there's a lot I don't know, but I didn't even know that Del Paso was in Sacramento. I just knew it was in the area. And I thought, oh, something new. Something new, And so I don't remember all the details, but Angel was saying there is a place that has like a sound studio and all kinds of things. And, it's interesting. It's growing here. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Yes, I want to do it because it's a non-traditional venue. So I feel really honored to actually partake in this concert coming up on Saturday because it's always a challenge to launch something new. So thank you for having me to play this concert on Saturday for your first event.
Oh, well, thank you, Tin. We are so honored to have you. And we are so excited that you're going to be playing this classical piano concert here on Del Paso Boulevard. So I want to wrap up our interview now for today, but I really want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me and share all this wonderful information about your career and your musical inspiration. And Tiana, it just seems like you've had an incredible musical journey and an incredible career, and just so proud of you. And your parents must just be so proud of you.
My
too.
parents are really the backbone of everything. There's so much love and support. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's been great.
That concludes our program. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Conversations with Carmela.